Why am I a Christian? Why is anyone a Christian, and why should anyone be a Christian? Lately, I've been wanting to get back to the basics on this channel and share plainly, here's why. Why do I do what I do? Why do I think what I think? And if you're asking those same questions about yourself, wondering, should I stay Christian? Should I become a Christian? Well, then I believe that this video can help you. It will be super high up, so we won't get into the weeds of certain arguments that I want to present, but I have a bunch of other older videos that get more specific on various questions, and I'm also planning to release new, updated ones in the months ahead, pressing into these base core issues of why Christianity. Let me start by pointing out that when I hear other Christians explain why they are Christian, I often hear explanations that I'm not satisfied with. Some people might say they are Christian because, well, they grew up in America and were raised in a Christian home. That may be well and good, and I mean, that's true for me too, but I can't live my life just believing whatever I was taught growing up. I'm also not all that interested in psychoanalyzing why I or anyone believes the way that they do. I'd rather explore why something should be believed rather than why it is believed by any particular individual like myself. We can never step outside of our background and biases perfectly, I get it, but we can to a manageable degree. If you didn't think that way, why are you even watching this video? Okay. Other people say that they believe in Christianity because it makes them feel good or helps them be moral or something like that. Basically, they are Christian and believe the stuff because it benefits them somehow. Again, I'm not satisfied with that. Now, I'm quick to point out that Christianity fulfills our human longings, meets our needs, helps us walk through suffering, all of it. There is healing here, so I urge people towards it, but it's not why I'm a Christian. Because again, I'm interested in why something should be believed. If we are going to be intellectually virtuous, we shouldn't believe things just because they incidentally benefit us. We should believe things if we are convinced they are true. Put differently, if Christianity did not offer the many benefits we often talk about, I would still be a Christian. Because for me, there's something deeper going on. So if you ask me why I am a Christian, a big part, not all, but a big part of my answer has to do with me being convinced that Christianity is true. I am a Christian because I believe Christianity is an intellectually rational and warranted belief system that makes the best sense of this world compared to anything else out there. It does the best job answering objections raised against it, and it leaves the fewest questions left unanswered. For example, I'm convinced that God exists. Obviously, that's a big part of Christianity. There are about 10 or so arguments for the existence of God that philosophers like Bill Craig, Alvin Plantinga, Richard Swinburne, J.P. Moreland, and others have developed in a philosophically robust way. And a lot of their work has actually led to a renaissance in Christian philosophy because, well, they did a really good job as serious philosophers that belief in God is rational. 100 years ago, Christian philosophy was a joke among academics. Now, if you look at academia and read philosophy papers, you'll find that it is simply not the case anymore. Theists, Christians are respected, even among their atheist colleagues who disagree with them. So when people ask why God exists, I can pull from philosophy and give the cosmological argument for God's existence, the teleological argument, typically expressed as a fine-tuning argument for God's existence. There's the moral argument for God, the argument from consciousness. There's also the ontological argument, which, well, at the very least, super interesting if you run it through S5 modal logic. I'm not going to explain all that stuff here. I just want to show you that there are good reasons to believe in God, and if you go down that rabbit hole, you will find it's pretty deep. Now, of course, that's not enough to explain why I am a Christian. I'm also convinced that God has revealed himself to humankind through Jesus and through writings that became the Bible. All of this comes from a different set of arguments. So, for example, I believe the Bible can be trusted. There are fulfilled prophecies in the Bible about the nation of Israel and about Jesus that are difficult to explain if God was not involved. Likewise, the Bible has a supernatural character to it when you compare the striking unity among its 66 books, 40 different authors, and 1,400 years. It's not just these cross-referencing charts that you might see on the internet. It's how stories are told and this inner logic that you find. But even if none of that convinces you, the trustworthiness of the Bible can also be established in a top-down way, starting with the historical reliability of the Gospels of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Here's how it works. First, steps can be taken to show that the authors were writing historical reports, they were able to record accurately, and they wrote with honest motives. That gives us historical reliability. Once we find that the Gospels are historically reliable, we look at what these writings say about Jesus, and we find that Jesus treated the Old Testament as the true authoritative Word of God, and he sent off and empowered his messengers who gave us the New Testament. So if we trust in Jesus, then we can trust in the Bible. But why trust that Jesus knew what he was doing? Well, because one of the things Jesus claimed was that he would be killed and God would raise him back from the dead. I mean, if he's right about that, then I think we can trust him on just about anything. So you look at the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus, and using abductive reasoning, we find that a resurrection is the best explanation for the facts of history. Putting this together, there is evidence that Jesus was resurrected, and there is evidence that the Gospels of Jesus accurately record what Jesus said. So it's perfectly rational to read the Gospels and believe the words of Jesus written there. When we do that, we come to discover that we can believe the whole Bible. There are more intellectual arguments for Christianity. Some people might argue for Christianity by investigating miracle reports attributed to Jesus, healings, deliverances. Craig Keener, Candy Gunther Brown, and others have done a ton of work on that. Also, people often turn to circumstantial evidence like changed life stories, answered prayer, the transformation of villages even. There are transcendental arguments for Christianity. That's a thing. There's Alvin Plantinga's Reformed epistemology stuff. Again, I'm not going to take you through all those arguments in this video. That's for videos I've done and videos in the coming months. But I just want you to know that there's a path to rational belief in Christianity, many paths even. I've walked them and I've become convinced. All of this is part of why I am a Christian, but that's not the whole part. I'm also Christian because I have this relationship with God. I just know him. And so on top of intellectual knowledge, there's relational and experiential knowledge with God. I know that sounds weird or even crazy to people who don't have that relationship, but it's not an uncommon story. Many people who come to God later in life are able to describe that even better than I can because they know what life was like before and after. And it's a striking difference. You feel lighter, more free, more connected with God in reality. Darkness is lifted. Sometimes it happens right away. Sometimes there's a process involved too, but it's real. Christians often talk about the Holy Spirit who enters our lives, empowers us, fills us, and so on. This stuff isn't theoretical. It's real. And we have stories. We also find that the Holy Spirit confirms and assures Christians like me of our faith, as it says he will in at least 7 different places in the New Testament. Granted, sometimes I don't feel God as strongly as I would wish, but even in those moments, it's enough to know I have felt him, sometimes very powerfully. That also grounds me, as such experiences should, in my life as a Christian. Now, the question, why am I a Christian, is pretty vague. I mean, I could, for example, explain the steps I took to become a Christian, saying I am a Christian because I believe and trust in Jesus. I could also say I'm a Christian because of what God did and give a big, good theological answer to how Jesus won me to himself. All good stuff. But hopefully you picked up on the fact that this wasn't the angle I took for this video. Instead, my hope is that you have found there's rational reasons to believe in Christianity, even if you have not yet heard what those reasons are. Now, obviously, there are also a lot of objections against Christianity too. Some of them are intellectual objections, and those are the ones I find worth addressing on my channel. Most arguments today, however, I mean, they're actually rhetorical strategies to make someone feel immoral or stupid or both, for believing in Christianity? Just look around, read comments, maybe even in this video, and you'll see what I mean. But again, if you want to approach this issue in an intellectually virtuous way, we need to filter those out and stick to what makes a belief rationally justified. So I encourage you to stick with this channel as I start publishing more content on reasons for belief in Christianity. I'll be using my MA in philosophy, trying my best to stick with established forms of logic and reasoning. You can also look at some of the past videos where I'm mostly addressing objections raised against Christianity, but also talking about some reasons why I believe there too. So hopefully you find all of this helpful. It's been fun making these videos and helping people think through these things on their own journey. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.